All right, welcome back to the Staff in Trenchcoat. I'm Raymond Magdalen here, as always, with my co-host Pope Jupiter.
Hello.
Today we're going to be talking about Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham, and I'll throw it right over to you. Did you like it?
Yeah, overall I enjoyed the book. It certainly presented an interesting world, and the characters were definitely interesting. Overall, I don't know that this book left me. I certainly didn't chew on this book very much. I have things to say, obviously, but I think that there were aspects of this book that were certainly better than others.
Fair enough. I really enjoyed the beginning, and then it kind of tapered off for me, and I was pretty disappointed in the latter half of it, I think.
Given how much of the plot relies on everyone's favorite trope of I'm choosing not to tell you for reasons that are not clear. Yeah, I get what you're saying about the from the middle onward. It starts to. I actually at one point I just stopped listening to it for a while, partially because peel back the curtain a little bit here. It's been 3 months since we recorded,
Yeah, something like that.
so we weren't sure if we knew it'd be a while before we recorded again, and and I kind of gotten to a point where I didn't really want to finish the book. Not in that I don't want these characters in. I just the conflicts didn't really seem like they were coming to a resolution. I was pleasantly surprised. I believe I commented at one point that this was likely going to end up being one of the most part one of the books we read. And I think it actually wrapped up pretty satisfyingly, at least most of the threads of this story. Obviously,
Do you mean satisfying in terms of like functionally, like the story concludes, or do you mean it was
yes,
satisfying in terms of you thought it was good?
it concluded the story. Like it,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know that the endings were necessarily good in that respect, satisfying in that respect, but
I thought it was a really big wet fart.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I have a lot to say, but I mean, I guess we can just jump in.
yeah, absolutely.
I thought that the fact that ostensibly the main character Alice is a teen,
Yeah, she's like 16, 17.
so a kid.
Yeah.
These are children. So it was clear that he wanted to create a love interest between Alice and Sandwich, but he also didn't want to have to write any of it out because it would have been creepy. That was the feeling that I got.
I felt like the love.
Because this isn't a YA novel or a children's
No.
novel. This is an adult fantasy novel where he injects a love interest between the two female protagonists. But all he ever does is just bait. And I was uncomfortable uh, because if he had just made the characters older, then number one, the stuff they were doing would have made more sense, and number two, he probably would have explored that love interest more.
I definitely get what you're saying. I felt like the romance implied between Samish and Alice was for brownie points. He's like, yeah, we have queer characters. We've got because Samish is basically implied to be what is referred to as I forget the trope name now. Basically, it's when you're straight except for the protagonist.
I'm not familiar with that as a
Yeah,
term.
it's something that crops up more.
So you think this was just straight tokenism?
Yeah,
I buy that. It was just weird.
yeah.
I feel like he could have done more justice to that than he did, and it comes up pretty early in the text.
He needed some device to tie Samish and Alice together that would let Samish behave more somewhat irrationally.
fair enough, but I think I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead, I guess, but I feel like this is my thing as a book podcaster is to get mad and say like I couldn't maintain my suspension of disbelief. I feel like I say that in almost every episode, but it happened again, uh, where the actions of the characters were so ridiculous that I just couldn't. I mean, the bad guy gets back his super knife, and his solution is, I better hide this somewhere better. Put it in a box and put it right back where it was.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they're with Andromeda, and they put Alice and Sandwich in a cell, and there's a guard, and then the guard's just gone. Is that what happened? Am I remembering that correctly? And Andromeda literally says, "Guard them," and then they leave, and then the bolt gets thrown, and then that's just the guard. The guard ceases. I don't think he's mentioned ever again.
I think they did do something about getting the guard out of there, but I mean, I remember the scene you're talking about, but yeah, that whole sequence was just kind of a comedy of errors.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. And again, am I misremembering, because it seemed like wasn't the knife being kept in that temple in the first place, and that's where it was taken from?
Yes, that was my impression, was that the safe that it was in at the end of the book is also the safe it was in before the book started.
And then he goes through the whole book, and then finally in the end they just pickpocket him.
I feel like a better author could have.
Well, they pickpocket Andromeda, who has become the host for the villain of the novel, who was, I mean, was he some kind of a beastie of some kind? Because there's that little moment where he's taking over Andromeda's body, and it references like it grabbed her and shook her, like as though like in the spirit realm he was some kind of a creature,
Yeah,
some kind of a lich king monster.
yeah. I'm assuming this is a book 2 or book 3 thing,
Bruh.
where they talk about what the deal is with the city and the threat of Kithamar, because it's not super clear. At least it wasn't clear to me. Obviously, it wasn't clear to you what that was. Whether it was, a lich in that it was a human magic user who did something generations ago, and they've kept their consciousness or their intelligence through the ages, or if it was some demon or other being like that. That's not super clear. The implication I kind of felt was that it at least had a modicum of human attitude, or like, it seemed like it at least had absorbed enough humanity that it more or less acted like a human. But it still was very alien, if that makes sense.
Right. But, well, I mean, essentially, we don't know what kind of monster he is, but I guess what I took away from that was that he is not simply just a person who has had multiple lifetimes.
Right.
He's some kind, or he has become some kind of a creature.
Right.
I just thought it was lame. So the resurrection knife feels like a jumping the shark, like true super no-no of modern fantasy. I would say other things like that.
I mean, the implication of it was that it was a knife. Knife was a necessary part of the ritual to continue this thread. I guess
No, the knife itself might not be doing the thing. I'm making up a term.
Right.
And it's, for me, the knife is connected to the ritual of resurrection.
Yeah, absolutely. That is explicit.
And for me, stuff like that is just not it's a type of story where I feel like you would, for it to not be lame, you have to be just writing an S plus story to justify the cheese of having, the central plot be a single magical item.
Right.
Like Tolkien can get away with it, but look at the story he had to do. If he had written The Lord of the Rings and it was like a 200-page short novel, and it just didn't have the scope or any of his research behind it or whatever, but the basic idea of like there was a ring that controls everybody. Better destroy it. Do you think that would we even know that book? No, it'd be some
Dime store pulp novel.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, does he bypass the cheese with the story that he's made? No, it's nowhere. It's not even close to the caliber I think that can justify I think the cheesiness of the main plot device there, and the characters. I don't know. They change, but I don't believe it.
Alice kind of has a pseudo arc, but it's a very informed one, in as much as we're told things about her character.
Well,
And
she's erratic in grief.
yeah,
That's so we have two problems. There's the death of her brother Darrow and her age. And both of those things are, I believe, the underpinning for why he thinks that the reader will buy some of the ways that they act and the strange ways they behave. And I'm just not buying it. And I reject both halves. The brother thing just seemed as though I just don't feel like the way that she behaved made sense as a result of the grief that she was feeling. I wasn't able to understand what the author intended me to understand about.
so I actually disagree. I think her reaction to the grief was pretty believable. I mean, essentially, what she was a young girl who had seen her. She basically had two adult role models, so to speak. She had her mother and she had Darrow. And from her perspective, now of course we learn later that allegedly her mother was supporting them or supporting Darrow, but from her perspective, she's got her mother who's doing menial work and splitting a hovel with three or four other people, whatever it was, versus her brother who's got his own apartment. It's kind of like the classic coming of age thing where you've got your parent who lives in a kind of crummy house, but it's dry and warm and a secure place to live. And they're struggling to get by. They're working menial jobs. Or you've got like the older brother who moved out and he's got his own apartment and it's all cool and everything. And she wanted to emulate him. And in her grief, and I mean that's explicit. There's a whole section
Absolutely.
That she was trying to emulate him as part of her grief, and it felt genuine to me. It felt reasonable to me for that to be how things were, how she reacted to that.
But what about I'll go ahead and just be an assassin. I'll just hand over this slaved boy.
Yeah, that did.
I mean, those are acts of like almost unimaginable cruelty. Am I mistaking? Is it Sandwich that gets sent? No, that's Alice. She gets sent to assassinate the lover of the of Garrett, something like that.
Well, it's actually the princess, like the daughter of the king, that she gets sent to assassinate when she's meeting with her lover. Yeah, who's Garrett. Yeah. If I remember correctly. In case you can't tell, we're awful with names.
Yeah, the names in the book were weird. There's Samish, who I've been calling Sandwich. There's Anamaka, who I've been calling Andromeda, and then you've got Alice. And then there was, what was it, Gray Lemon,
Linnet, yeah.
Linnet, um, and Ulin. And then there's the prince and princess and their names. I think Elaine was one of them.
Yeah, I think that was the princess who Alice was sent to kill.
But again, I just wasn't convinced. It didn't make sense to me that she would so brazenly and without a whole lot of thought commit especially the act of like being party to handing that kid over.
Yeah.
That seemed there was no way.
Yeah, that thinking on it now, that scene was very, very rushed. Very,
I mean, he could have included some inner monologue of confliction that was more than what he offered, and maybe softened the blow of it a little bit, but she really doesn't at all.
if I'm remembering that scene correctly, isn't there kind of she's not even sure why she's doing this? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of the inner monologue?
And then she just play acts as though she's a badass. And,
Yeah.
And
Which,
it was rough.
real badasses can tell when people are play acting. It's,
And again, she's this little half-starved 16-year-old girl.
yeah.
Just like being party to...
I do think you might be putting a little too much emphasis on the age, because this definitely feels like someone trying to write something with the social everything of like the late Middle Ages. So a 16-year-old girl would have been an adult doing adult things.
Not just being party to like state level, like acts of like in this case, the movement of like an enslaved child
I mean, she was
or a
basically,
kidnapped child, so human trafficking.
why not? She was basically just a mercenary in that situation. I mean, yes, essentially she took her brother's place in that job.
Yeah, it just I would have anticipated a greater degree of, I guess, empathy between the main character and the child. And more, I don't know what the right word would be, antipathy maybe toward the situation. And I would have thought there would have been more reflection on it than there seemed to be in the text. But otherwise, I guess I'm forgetting what the overarching topic is that we were getting at. The characters behave in ways that felt forced to me, and ultimately the narrative, the story, it does sort of wrap up, and there are some unanswered questions that lead us into the second book, but it was not a very satisfying.
No.
I didn't end the book hungering for the next one.
No, that's for sure. I expected the book to end. Honestly, the book felt like it was building up to them like making all these plans, and then like there would be a last minute twist or something before they could implement the plans, and then that would be where the book left off. I did not expect them to actually like, you know, get the knife back, accomplish all the things they did by the end of the book. I did not see that coming.
All right, well, hit me with violence.
There was some. It wasn't really. This is a very PG fucking book.
Yeah,
At least as far as violence and sex and that kind of stuff. There wasn't really a whole lot of. There was allusions to it, and certainly people took violent actions, but
it was pretty tame.
yeah.
There's certainly a lot of the threat of violence.
Yeah, there's a lot of mention of weapons, of people, moving into position, that kind of thing. But, I mean, the actual violence is pretty quick and mostly elided, from what I remember.
Yeah. We do get the one scene eventually where Darrow gets killed.
Right.
And there's some kind of gory discussion there of the wound. But other than that, it was pretty tame. So I guess, going out of order here, this is as good a time as any. I know you want to talk about that poop.
I don't know, it just felt like...
I thought that you were just being an asshole because I was in the first 15% of the book and I was digging it. And you were like, man, there's too much, poop, so on and so forth. And I was like, oh, come on, dude. There's too much. It's a weird.
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only
There's
one.
a lot of it, and there's in the middle of like really serious situations, he'll just be like, oh, our plan's gonna fall down like a big turd.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Yeah, the sheer amount of just and the author is apparently 54 years old. This felt like someone who had like just read one of those BuzzFeed listicles of things you didn't know about the Middle Ages and learned that actually the cities were covered in shit and just filthy places, and they're like, well, I'm gonna show all those like that. Learning this guy is 54 years old just blows my mind.
There's so much of it.
There's so much.
And the constant message of the pots that they use, and everything is where are they throwing the shit? Who's cleaning the shit up?
Yeah. I mean, the scene at the beginning where
realism doesn't mean pick one.
Right.
Doesn't mean pick one thing. And this was a fantasy novel.
Yeah.
He didn't achieve realism of the city.
No.
Although he did know that there were, the city might have lots of homeless folks, including children. Lots of people are hungry. Plague is a thing. He had the Wikipedia bullet points. And he was checking them off.
Absolutely.
And again, at the beginning of the book, I was like, "Oh, this is a cool city. It's gritty."
I mean, I loved the scene at the beginning where the whole alley just dumps their chamber pots on the cop.
Yeah, if it had been that, and then occasionally a mention of it,
yeah,
that would have still been good. But in the context of how much there was, it was bad. For me, the most egregious thing is what I just mentioned, though, where he'll use similes to poop at moments in the text that are not otherwise humorous at all.
No.
And so, like, you really do get the impression that, like, we have to, this isn't so much like an academic podcast, but I feel like from, like, an intellectual perspective, we have to acknowledge that he meant for one of the themes of this novel to be poop in the city. There's too much of it in the text that a writer of his stature, it was on purpose.
Yes.
He wanted us thinking about that shit.
There definitely could be an angle I could see for it representing, like, either the rot of this thread of Kithamar or the rot that allowed the thread to be severed, like it allegedly was.
And there's the seasons that change as the characters change.
Yeah. But it's not really paid off in any way. Maybe it is in the subsequent books.
It's not worth it. Whatever he's gonna accomplish, even if in the third book. I mean, I don't know. I guess, like, maybe if you've read all three, hit us up in the comments or get us on Twitter and let us know, like, does he fire off in the third book and you're just like, the shit.
It all makes sense.
It all makes sense. What a it's a whole definitive overarching message being sent through his world building through Turd.
Right.
If that happens, then hats off.
Yeah.
But as it stands with the first book, it does get to the point where you're just like, why all the shit? Daniel, why all the shit?
Yeah, I mean, if that's your thing, cool.
I mean, I half expected at some point for him to just be like, and then Alice went and took shit, and this is what she thought. But we don't actually see any, because you might say, like, oh, well, it's weird that in fantasy books, and it's a common joke. It's like they never write the part where they go to the bathroom
Right.
or whatever. So he was like, I'll get you, but it's not that. It's just, and evidently, like the prison sends out carts with the prisoners that have to scoop the shit out of the streets.
Yeah.
And so it's this is a major theme of the text.
Yeah.
It's integrated into the descriptions of the scenes, the analogies that he uses. It is a physical construct in the very central city as a character, as an edifice in the text. It's central to his visuals that he gives us of the city, and he, in just about any scene that's of high drama, he also mentions the pot. Almost he wants us to think that, even just the interactions between characters are ultimately just shit. Everything is shit. And fine, I guess. I just wouldn't have done it.
No.
I wouldn't have done it. And it's another one of those things, just to be fair, because I said this a bunch with Brandon Sanderson, but was there not an editor involved here? At no point along the line did anybody say, bro,
I'm not sure what's worse.
why all the poop?
The idea that he doesn't have an editor, or that he has an editor and this is the edited version.
Oh, like it was worse.
Did we get... Is there...
No, the poop's important, and he just leaves it all in.
Is there a director's cut of Age of Ash with a text version of Two Girls, One Cup?
I hope so. If there isn't currently, calling all fanfic writers.
No. Do not send that to us. Please. I don't want to read that.
Oh no, absolutely send that to us. Let's go. I'm in. I'll read it. Shit. Okay. So, let's talk about gender. Not that gender is shit.
Well, gender is a shit, but...
Transition.
I mean, there definitely was a little bit with the way that it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of gender-based discrimination that I really...
No, but and I think the characters are good in that sense. I don't have there was no... I don't think he went too far in any vector in terms of the way that he deploys his female characters. I think that they're set well. I didn't at any time feel like, he's written a male character, he's just trying to make them female. It seemed natural.
Right.
And so I think that's good.
But, I mean, this is another reason why I felt like the Alice Sandwich romance was a token effort, is because there doesn't really seem... This is another fucking sexless book.
Yeah.
I mean, there's...
It really does read like a YA, but not... It feels like it got censored. Not like it was written as a YA novel. Like it's written like an adult fantasy narrative, but then it just has these weird things in it.
But kids bopped?
Yeah, well, there's all the poop, and you just feel like maybe he was intending for the audience to be younger, and that maybe they would have laughed at the jokes.
Maybe. I mean, I like a good poop joke as much as the next guy, but they just weren't funny poop jokes.
No, I mean, there's the one scene at the beginning where they're throwing all the poop at him, but...
Yeah, after that, it was just like, oh, another turd. Awesome. I mean, I gotta wonder if it's a Dan Harmon situation here. If it's not integral to the plot, then there's another reason why he's put this much effort into it.
I mean, let us know. Is book 2 just as shitty?
Pun fully intended, as always.
Okay, so well, I mean, we're moving along. Talk to me about the city itself.
Well, I think the city, and I also wanted to discuss the protagonist antagonist relationship because
So hit me with that.
I don't think it was super clear in this book. Uh, I mean, clearly, Kithamar, the Thread, Anamika, whatever, were intended. They're the informed antagonist. But what do they do other than uh, reinforce the existing status quo? Do they do that indicates they're the bad guys other than steal that child, which Alice also does?
Yeah, but that's bad.
So that's the only thing, though. They steal a child.
And they murder him
Yes,
and many others. I mean, you get the impression that they have been.
true. Well, the impression I got was that the succession of king to prince. I mean, essentially, they groom the vessel, and that's what causes the conflict in this is that some other force, which we are not privy to, we're not told who it was or because I don't think Sasha is the one who got the knife away, right? In the first part, I didn't miss that. They didn't explain.
I don't think that she was.
I don't think that there's some unknown party.
Yeah, I think we get that's going to be something that gets tied up and change, given to us in the second novel. I think.
Yeah.
And if it was that way, then it wasn't clear to me from the text.
But my point is we're kind of informed that I guess my whole thing is that it's not really clear that the protagonists are actually like trying to they're just reacting. I guess I didn't consider how the way that they kidnap the kid and that kind of stuff that definitely puts them in the bad guy territory.
Yeah, bro. And it was his kid.
I get my whole thing was that like from an in-universe perspective, like we can talk about the problems with monarchies and all that.
So I mean, is what you're saying that they just like it's not clear what evil they plan to do with
Yeah.
with the power they have, other than just
Continue running a city home to tens of thousands of people. Like it's not clear. Like they
certainly
don't
there's a class thing going on.
right, but it doesn't
But-
seem like he's writing an anti-monarchy. You know,
Because I mean, he mentions that people freeze, and there is suffering, and they're pretty barbaric about the way that they do the quarantine, but it seems like the low is not as low as it could be. Like you've got a lot of kids that don't really have homes, but it seems like he makes it really clear that they're probably going to be able to find food and shelter.
yeah, there's definitely a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of hay made about how what's the section of the city that they're from that Alice and Sandwich are from that like they take care of their own, they look after their own, and it has a strong blue collar working class we take care of us vibe to
Is
it.
it Long Hill?
That sounds right. Yeah.
There's Long Hill, Green Hill, and some other places that are similarly named. But I guess I'm not necessarily saying that I agree with your assessment, but I'm trying to understand what your meaning is. That, to put another way, the city does not come off as like the fantasy of what you would imagine like a multi-generational quasi-monster evil person, how they would run the city.
Yeah,
It would
there
just- yeah.
there aren't we're not told there's swaths of people disappearing to feed the energy of this demon. It kind of seems like it just survives in the body of its progeny and just keeps on like that.
Yeah, it's
And
like a in family secret.
Right. So I mean, this threat of Kithmar doesn't seem to be any worse than any other monarch, and we don't really have a view of the rest of the world. I suspect that will be given to us would be given to us in subsequent books.
At least you would think in the second book we'll get to see, what is it, the Gold Coast?
Yeah. Bronze Coast.
Bronze Coast.
Yes. Legally distinct, not the Gold Coast.
Yes.
But so it could very well be that that Kithamar is a bastion of progressivism in the world. I think that's unlikely, but it's possible.
Okay.
And it may be that I'm just thinking too much about this, but I don't. I think that's kind of why we started doing this, is because we think too much about books, and might as well put it out for someone else to listen to.
Yeah.
Because it seems like the city has a feudal metropole. It has a pretty functional social system that keeps most people alive who haven't completely alienated anyone else, and it's pretty. I mean, they in the beginning there's the whole I think it is Samish or Alice calls off a poll on a girl from Long Hill who got a job or married up and was wearing.
Right. That's right at the beginning.
Yeah, the implication is that Roland, or whatever the fucking dude's name, the leader of their poll party, he was like, she's not Long Hill anymore, she's traded up. And Alice's attitude was like, nah, she's born and raised, she's still Long Hill. And that definitely seems to be a sub theme, because when Alice is at her worst, there's explicit mention that she doesn't feel like a member of Long Hill anymore, that she doesn't feel like she belongs there anymore.
Yeah, there is a distinct. She moves up in class as a result of the money, at least up from the class of the young people that she's used to being around.
Right.
It's unclear if how much money she has, but it also is made to seem as though it's not infinite. She didn't become rich, but she had enough money to afford room and board for a substantial amount of time, and she could splurge a little bit more than they could.
Right.
So I don't even know if she really achieved. She didn't get even as much gold as one of the workers.
No. The scene where her mom reveals, I wasn't super clear if the 11 silver coins was like the whole amount that she had loaned him was just like an initial investment or initial loan or whatever. That wasn't super clear to me, but it definitely seemed...
But it seemed like that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
But then Alice has a handful or more of gold coins.
Right.
So then I guess that contradicts, I guess, to a degree what I just said, which was, I mean, maybe she was independently wealthy.
I mean, it's entirely possible that...
It's not like Harry Potter at Green Gods.
Well, this is something that anyone who's played Dungeons & Dragons for any length of time will kind of be familiar with. If you go into a cave and get 100 gold coins, you have more wealth than most of the villages you are going to visit, unless you get to in real terms, 100 gold coins is more wealth than a standard average village is going to see for years on end. And this is reflected, you can buy a whole meal for less than a tenth of a gold coin. A few coppers gets you a stay at an inn, and a copper is 1/100th of a gold. And I mean that's why D&D has the magic items and stuff to have a gold sink, because basic survival costs pennies in the D&D system. In just about any survival system, unless it's like a cyberpunk dystopia game where
Well, and she never eats well, Alice. It's still mostly crab.
right, which makes sense if she's used to living like
Yeah.
a broke person. She's not gonna go out for the expensive food, because it's not like now where we know where the expensive food is. Now if I suddenly like found a bag with $1 million in it or something, I would know what expensive restaurants are that I would want to go to. There's probably the inn in Long Hill, and then there's probably nicer inns in nicer areas, but I mean, the reality is it's basically whether you get fresh meat or less fresh meat or no meat in that era.
Yeah, and he does go into, Sandwich is losing weight, and at one point there, more than once he describes being hunger drunk, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so again, there is suffering, but to your point about, it's just not clear what the master plan is for the bad guy, other than just maintaining power. But the way that he wields the power kind of just seems like the way that it would be under
Yeah.
any circumstance that you would normally imagine, aside from like a utopian city.
Right.
That's kind of how you would imagine things to be going, and so is the whole trilogy really just like the petty exploration of like they just want to be the perpetual, moderate right leaning leadership of this small, in the grand scheme of things, city?
Yeah.
Doesn't seem very epic.
Yeah.
So
That
surely there's got to be something else going on.
surely not that there's any indication of it in this book. I mean, I would have expected like, and they even had the Bronze Coast woman, so someone from outside who was specifically inculcated in like these mysteries and these secrets and these.
And have we talked about this yet? About how the whole narrative spins up the Kithamar, the character, the being, as oh, I've lived all these lives. I've been a child. I've been a man, a woman. I have experienced life in its fullness, and it becomes circular, having done it so many times, and blah blah blah. And then immediately at the end of the story, he just walks out on the street. Oops, got pickpocketed, or pickpocketed.
Yeah.
Oopsie.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like there was a scene where he mentioned that even with all his years of experience, he can still be taken by surprise.
Yeah,
But that's still very weak. You know,
I thought it was super lame. I was like, okay, so that there's all of this intrigue, and they're going to start a fire, and they've got this whole plan, and then in the end, just steal it, just pickpocket him,
it would make
her, it.
I don't know. It would make sense if there was more of a poor people wits versus wealthy people, like, because that like again, a better author could have created a narrative where they try to do all these things, the Green Hill way, and it doesn't work, and then they go back to classic Long Hill knife tactics, and it goes off without a hitch. Like that could be an interesting story. That would make just pickpocketing her like that more meaningful, rather than just oh, all this uh, intrigue and action, and you ended up just pickpocketing her, and that worked.
And then does she throw it in the river? No. Instead, she somehow alters the ritual and just summons the ghost of Darrow.
Yeah. And then she does throw it in the river, but yeah.
But I mean, at any other point, did they just do part of the ritual and then summon the person? I don't remember them. Maybe they allude to it that Andromeda can do it, but Alice just does it. She's just like, I'm just going to get this right the first time.
Yeah, I mean,
She just trivially casts like one of the three most powerful things that magic can be conceived of doing. She just goes halfway to bringing the dead to life. Uh, First try, no problem.
yeah, that needed a scene of exposition about how the knife and the ritual works to explain how, well, what this ritual is intended to do is to return a spirit for communion, but with these changes, it allowed, blah blah blah, tech speak, blah
Well,
blah blah, arcane
what do
babble.
you think of the magic system?
What magic system?
God. There's Black Candle,
Yes, they have cell phones. Um,
FaceTime.
FaceTime, absolutely, yes. I At first I was of the mind that this was and it is a fairly low magic setting.
Well, at the end, Andromeda, in the form of Kithamar, the spirit monster, uh, has a magic battle with the woman from the
The
Bronze
Bronze Coast.
but it's like a Dragon Ball Z scene where they power up, but then they never fight. The show got canceled after the build up episode, and they just never battle because the two girls come up and pickpocket the knife.
Wasn't
And,
wasn't it implied that it was like this? Because I've encountered different
well,
uh,
they lock wills.
yeah.
Okay, fine, but
I mean, it was definitely anticlimactic, but I've always preferred that kind of
and then she just gets away, right?
yeah.
They even sit there and they're like, yeah, we're gonna kill her, and then instead they just do a pickpocket, and then
Which
Andromeda just leaves.
if it were me, and I were the generations old being inhabiting the ruler of the city, every single one of my belts would have anti pickpocket technology, which existed in the Middle Ages. People had figured out that if you like run a metal wire through your belt, it's a lot harder for pickpockets to cut it. And they would have fake pouches on the outside of their belt to
Right,
so
but they were Long Hill pickpockets. Uh,
yeah,
they were the masters of the pole.
right.
Uh, Alice and Sandwich, uh, the crack team.
Yeah.
So, I did not like the magic system. Although it's definitely much more like the wonder, soft magic side of the spectrum
Yeah.
as compared to something like Sanderson. Normally, I prefer this kind of magic, but it just seemed watered down. Like there was a version that had more of it in there and it was more complex, and then almost like the editor said it's too complicated for kids. And so he had to make it more straightforward.
Yeah.
Uh, and so I guess that's the theme here is that either we were mistaken and this indeed is a YA novel, or it's just a really juvenile adult fantasy novel
Yeah.
in some senses. I liked the candle. But it was weird that even though it's made clear that they've never really seen magic other than just like the parlor tricks of a fortune teller, there's no trepidation once she figures out that the candle's magic. She's just like, yeah, this is fine. I mean,
Yeah, that was up until they confirmed that there was some sort of like the fact that there's the threat of Kithamar and the this mystical being inhabiting different bodies or what have you. Uh, that being the way it is, up until that point, I was pretty sure this was a world where magic exists. Like, yeah, there's magic. It's mostly parlor tricks. There's maybe something.
You were expecting no sorcerers.
Right. I mean, I obviously didn't have an explanation for the candle, but I mean, I can think of a million ways to explain that without anything that anyone would recognize as anyone would call magic.
Right. Okay.
You know, even just some sort of herb that allows, point to point communication. So it's obviously consumed. Like that's an explicit thing that it runs out while she's talking to them at the beginning. But other than that, I mean, the Bronze Coast woman, didn't she like explicitly cause the plague that she hid in, or was that
Unclear.
Yeah, like it was implied, I thought, but I guess it wasn't outright stated.
I thought
Um,
she said that she didn't do that, I can't remember.
yeah, I can't.
Yeah, the magic system was for me another part of the novel that, based on the very beginning of the book, there was a great deal of intrigue, and then as the story progressed, it just wasn't very cool.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna knock the creativity of it. Uh, it just didn't get me. I was not. It was a good story at the end of the day. It was just I was not titillated by it.
no,
In any.
it didn't pull me in, and the questions that are left unanswered, I am not thirsting to answer. Ultimately,
I mean, as far as the writing style, I guess we've kind of gotten into that for the most part. But I will add, there are also some really good turns of phrase.
yeah,
So to do our standard discussion of the profanity and the fill-in words that are used, 10 out of 10.
yeah,
I thought he did great in this book. There was plenty of instances where I expected a certain type of word and he used them. And then he also had some stand-in phrases that I thought were pretty good. Um, like whenever he's going to talk about like a casual tryst, I'm going to rub up on him.
uh huh.
Okay, I can.
Are you rubbing on them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any kind of crime or grift is a pull.
Yeah.
That's
And I thought that was fine. And yeah, there were a lot of good moments. As I always do, I'll pull up my list of quotes. I don't even remember what this one is, but we'll do them. Why not? The strutting, acne-faced guard was moving down the street, smiling at girls. Many of the girls smiled back. It meant something to wear the blue cloak. It meant, among other things, that if he chose to beat someone or steal from them or worse, he wouldn't be punished. Some girls like that. They thought being the special one of a man like that would make them safe. And they were wrong. At best, it would mean they were safe from people besides him.
I remember that line. That was a really, really good, poignant line.
He counted out his 10 pieces of silver and put half of them in Alice's hand. I'm keeping the rest. I have to eat too. She started to ask how he'd come by so much, and he shook his head before she could. He thought he saw shame in her expression, and he wanted to smooth it away with his thumbs. He wanted her to be the laughing child she'd been when he was her age. He wanted the world to corrupt everything, only not her. Foreshadowing.
Uh-huh.
Spoiler. In fact, by the transitive property, he does corrupt her.
Yeah,
Really,
for sure.
Real bad. I mean, basically, in just a span of months, she goes from, I'll pickpocket somebody if I need to make some money, to,
I'm gonna kill this bitch.
yeah, I'm going to kill this person. I'll deliver this child to you for
Yeah.
the slaughter.
I mean, even if she didn't know they were gonna kill him, there's no good reason to unwillingly take a child from somewhere and give it to someone else. Like, the best case scenario is that child is gonna be ritualistically murdered.
Absolutely. The greater crop would come soon, and Kithamar would celebrate with pies and cakes, and the slaughter of animals. Everyone would try to get fat enough to live through spring. So again, just a good turn of phrase.
Mm-hmm.
She'd never seen war, but she imagined it was like the alley behind a butcher's shop. Only, only better because she liked animals more than she liked people. On a battlefield, the flies all danced on bodies that had had the chance to fight back. So it's sort of a weird pro-animal thing. Now you know how her mind works. Glad I could help you. Now warm your hands up and get the fuck out of here. I told you, I have business. And don't think for a moment I'll let you off bringing me that bread. You agreed. That's a character we should talk about. That's Goro, the wild man.
Yes. He's someone who I'm guessing is a plant for a future book.
All right, one more. She went to sleep, and she didn't wake up, Elbrith said. And then, with a solemn knowing nod, she woke down. I mean, that's pretty good.
That's clever. That's...
Next thing you know, you go to sleep, you wake down.
Yep.
And, there is this thread of, like, the river is hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a really fun and I think insightful anthropomorphization of the city and the river and...
Well, there's something about... if someone dies in the river, they need full rights because the river is hungry.
It'll take their soul, yeah.
Yeah.
But then the one guy, one of Alice's mother's men, tells her that's bullshit. It's just to make you pay more.
Yeah.
So, a jab at him there.
But yeah, I guess I would have liked them to elaborate more on those beliefs, because telling us, even if they are, just a grift for the temples to charge more, Alice's reaction, no, he needs full rights. Like, there's something she believes that bad will happen if he doesn't get full rights. Like, that's something that she obviously believes very strongly. If she believes this very strongly, there's a cultural reason for it.
Right.
And I would have liked to see that elaborated on instead of just like the only reference be, that's just bullshit the temples make up to charge more.
I mean, honestly, I feel like you could take this story and just get rid of the whole the overarching thing with the spirit monster guy and all of that shit. Just give me a novel of just like a coming from nothing up to being like a somebody in this city, and I think that would have just been a better novel. So I think where he's at his best is the characters interacting with the city folk, finding a room to stay in,
Mm-hmm.
and the intrigue of the way that the guards function, and the entire city is this kind of breathing, living character, and the main plot line that he throws on top of that just kind of wasn't as good as the rest of it.
Yeah, I agree. It's like he had this idea for a living city, basically literally alive, more so than even a city normally is described as. And he was like, well, how do I write a story around it? And this is the story he came up with, and was like, what else you got?
What else you got?
Like, you got another treatment of that idea, another stab at it, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I guess sort of there's not a whole lot more to say on it. The main characters are interesting enough, and the love story that he teases is all well and good, but ultimately it just kind of is an unremarkable novel.
Yeah. It's technically proficient.
Yep. Writing style is very good.
And it's
structurally sound.
He's got clever wordplay and clever words, best words.
Best words.
But the sum of it all is just kind of poop.
A turd.
Yeah.
The irony of the theme.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a gifted author. I'm inclined to want to return to him at some juncture in the future and read one of the. I can't remember the name of it, but he has a trilogy that is all it's well established. It's been around for a while. That type of thing, but yeah. So I mean, are there? What else you got?
That about sums it up.
Have you decided what we're going to be reading next time?
So I was originally going to do that TikTok I sent you with the about the woman who the
Oh
author.
no.
I was originally going to do one of her books, and then I saw that TikTok.
Okay.
I was like, maybe not. Um,
Well, do we want to describe what that was?
yeah, sure. Basically, I found this TikTok. I don't remember her name. It doesn't matter. I don't think we need to put her on blast or anything. She's fine. But basically, she's writing a series set in kind of a Middle Eastern type setting.
Desert.
Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, well, I don't like harems in my story. So I decided to create this. She had a name for it, but it was phlebotomy, uh, that basically makes it so that everyone is forcibly monogamous. You like bond with the first person you fuck, and that's the only person you can like.
Conceive with, so it's a procreation
Yeah.
thing.
So it basically.
Reverse birth control or
Yeah. So it created. Basically, she didn't want to deal with where are all the harems, and instead of like coming with a good reason, she just fundamentally altered. Uh,
also harems might be partially for that purpose, but they would have them anyway. And I would think there would be even less monogamy
yeah.
in a world where you knew for sure that you weren't going to be creating offspring with your dalliances. You're stepping beyond the bounds of marriage, and it just like I said, it seemed to me to be kind of a vaguely Christo-fascist thing. Like I don't know, so I don't want to imply that I think there's reason to believe, but my surprise level would not be super high if there were other far right type ideologies being presented,
Yeah.
or if it was just outright a Christian author or writer, or it could be just a run of the mill author and they just happen to have one idea that we weren't crazy about as described in a short TikTok.
Right.
That's possible too, but I mean it wasn't that. That is not the type of mechanic that I'd be interested in reading a great deal about.
No. It's there's been a couple of other TikToks I've seen from her where she talks about the spice level in romance and how she prefers low spice. And I mean that's fine. I don't need to read about fucking in every book I read. But it definitely smacked of kind of prudish, you know, I don't need to.
We've been reading a lot of prude
Yeah.
stuff. Maybe we need more fantasy romance in our lives.
Well, that was my thought. She's a fantasy romance author, but
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
not like this.
no. But I think what we're going to be reading for next time is I decided on a Simon R. Green book because I've read some of his other stuff. He's a juggernaut in the urban fantasy genre. And this one I haven't read, called For Love of Magic. And let me just read the summary. History isn't what you think it is. It's been rewritten to remove all the magic. Together, two people decide to put things right. A new novel of magic, history, and true love from Simon R. Green. When they fall in love, it's magic. History can change and has changed. Magic was and is real. Once upon a time, there was a forgotten era of magic and monster, but the remnants and all memory of the old world have been replaced by the sane, the scientific, and the rational. But sometimes the magical past isn't content to stay past. That's where Jack Damian comes in. It's his joy to protect our present from the supernatural remnants of an earlier time, a different history. It's his job to make the past safe. Jack is called to the Tate Museum, where dozens of people have disappeared beneath the surface of a painting. While investigating, he finds himself smitten with a mysterious art expert, Amanda Fielding. But Amanda has plans of her own, and soon the two are traveling through time, back to the Roman Empire and then forward through history, from King Arthur's court to Sherwood Forest. As they explore history's past as written and overwritten, the balance of magic and science shifts, and the choices the two make could change the world forever.
Okay.
So I've read Simon Green's stuff before. He's a pretty good author, and this looks interesting.
I mean, it sounds like fun.
So, for Love of Magic, Simon R. Green.
Okay, we've reached that time. Age of Ash. Daniel Barenbaum. All right, we've reached that time. Age of Ash. Brian Anderson. All right, we've reached that time. Age of Ash. Brian Adams.
Now you're doing it on purpose.
What is it? Brian
It's on the screen right there.
Brian Abraham.
Yes.
Age of Ash. Better than Knight Errant.
Yes, because at least in this one, a cop got shit on.
All right, we'll see you in the next episode.
Hey, thanks for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Staff Trenchcoat. Look for us on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to shoot us an email at staffandtrenchcoat@gmail.com if you have a book recommendation, and we hope to see you in the next episode.